Welcome into Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Today on the show, listen, we're going to spend the whole show talking about the Falcons. This is going to be your no-spin breakdown. This is going to be your church sermon. We're going to look at all different angles of the Atlanta Falcons and where we're at after that debacle of the game last night against the Panthers. This is Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked On Sports Atlanta.
This is Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
Hittin Hard is brought to you by Bet Online. Head to youtube.com, put Locked On Sports Atlanta into your search browser. When you get there, hit that subscribe button. We're headed toward 5,000 subscribers. Be a part of our ever-growing community. Free and available on all of your favorite podcast platforms, including Spotify, Odyssey. Download us for free. Leave us a 5-star review. Roku and Amazon Fire. Yes, you can find us on those platforms as well. And, of course, give me a follow on my personal Twitter page. That would be at JMCH316. So there's no way to talk about the Falcons game last night, 25-15 loss up in Carolina, than to call it a debacle. Okay? And this is where I'm at, because we're 10 games in. I don't want to hear about rain. I don't want to hear about injuries. I don't want to hear about any of that stuff anymore. Okay? As I always say, I don't care how the watch is made. Tell me what time it is. I don't care about the labor pains. Show me the baby. And we're in the middle of the season, right? We're headed toward the final stretch of the season, where now it's about, can we win enough and find ourselves in a division race, playoff race, whatever, right? Because again, for everybody that talks about, well, the wins, well, the coaching staff and all those people, they expect to win every week, okay? Now, let's start, because I'm going to tick off everybody today. I'm going to tick off the Mariota fans. I'm going to tick off the Ridder fans. We're going to tick everybody off today. But we're going to give you the no-spin truth about all this, okay? Let's start with the low-hanging fruit in the quarterback, okay? There's no other way to describe Marcus Mariota's performance last night other than dreadful, okay? Just the ridiculous plays. And I'll give him credit. He owned up to some of that stuff, but that doesn't excuse it. You're 7 years in the league. You don't fall to the ground and just throw up lollipops up in the air. And he can't just throw the football out of bounds when pressure is coming at him. Like, those are things that he should have learned at Oregon. Forget being in his 7th year in the NFL. You get outside, you scramble, nothing's there. Throw it out of bounds. Live for another day, right? But here's reality, because Arthur Smith was asked about, did you think you were going to replace Mariota? No. Okay. Let's start from the beginning. We've explained this, but obviously there's a lot of people that just don't understand. Their plan was never Marcus Mariota at quarterback, okay? Their first plan, plan A, was we're going to give up a whole bunch of assets and money, and we're going to bring Deshaun Watson in to play quarterback. And we'll bridge until then, rookie or otherwise, we'll bridge until then, and he's off his suspension, and then we'll bring him in, and that's our quarterback. Now, they were not doing that move thinking that they were in a 3-year rebuild, thinking that they were in a 2-win mode this year. They weren't doing any of that stuff with the idea of, well, in 3 years, we'll be good. No, you don't give up 3 first-rounders and $150, $200 million, which is where they thought the number was going to be, and think that you're going to have to wait 3 years to get good. You don't make those moves for way down the future. Sorry, the NFL is not for long for a reason. That was plan A. Plan B was, well, we'll just go with a year of Matt Ryan. His money will just, we're not going to necessarily renegotiate, but we'll eat his money. We'll live for a year, and then we'll bridge into the next year. We'll draft Ridder. Then we can look at starting him next year. Matt Ryan even talked about that. They approached him about, if they draft a young quarterback, would he work with them? He said yes. Okay. But then when they went after Deshaun Watson, it all blew up. And Matt said, I want out. Let me contact Indianapolis. Let me talk to those guys and see if that's going to be a good fit. And they worked out a deal from there. And then you were left with Marcus Mariota at quarterback. Now, they're not going to play Desmond Ridder. They're not. I don't think you're going to. You might see Desmond Ridder once they are mathematically eliminated from any chance of being in the playoffs. then you might get to see Ridder play. Until then, they feel like, and I'll trust them on this, their best option to win is Marcus Mariota. And they're 4-6. So they haven't been drastically far off. But as we'll talk about here, there is a pathway. But that pathway is getting away from them these last couple of weeks. All of the things that they need to do to win games, they're going away from all of that. Whether it's to prove a point, whether it's because the way the game gets dictated. What concerns me about last night is that they gave you the blueprint. That this is what Carolina, San Diego, all these teams they're giving you the blueprint about how are we going to defend the Atlanta Falcons? What are we going to do? I'm going to load you up. We're going to take away the run. We're going to contain on the outside. You're not going to run all around us. And by the way, the Falcons ran well last night. We're going to talk about this. Look, Falcons last night ran for 138 yards in the game. 25 carries, 138 yards, 5.5 yards per attempt. Now, I know Mariota has definite something to do with that, but in the totality, that's what their yardage is. So you can scream about wanting Ridder. That's not going to happen. But what they have to do is if you're going to play Marcus Mariota, then you have to play to his strengths. You have to play what his strengths are. You have to play to what they do well and they don't do well. And I'm going to give you that pathway. I've got the numbers. These are not random happenstance, coincidental, just things that happen in the universe. Because there's been a lot of good things that have happened for the Falcons. And let's face it, they've also had some luck on their side this year, right? How many balls has Marcus Mariota dropped on the turf that literally have just bounced right back up in his hands? Like, that's something you can't plan on. That's something that's just one of those lucky things, right? And line up this roster healthy against all the rosters that they played healthy. Do you think that game could have been different if the best pass rush duo in the NFL, Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney, would have played for the Cleveland Browns? Do you think if they had Bosa and Armstead in those guys, they couldn't have influenced and dictated the game more against the 49ers? So, again, when we talk about our injury, we're playing teams all banged up. They're playing us all banged up. You have to get past all that. But as far as the quarterback goes, it's not going to change. They're going to stick with the guy that they feel like is going to win until there's not a chance to win or they're out of playoff contention. Because right now at 4-6, they don't look like a playoff team, do they? And this idea that they're going to run off 5 wins in a row, again, it's 1 week at a time with this team. Now, let's first talk about my friends over at BetOnline. Listen, betonline.net is your number one source for all of your sports wagering information. So, look, did you have any action on the Falcons last night? We got a big weekend of NFL football, tons of great college football. Hawks got it done last night. They've been really good at home in the early stretch of this season. You want to get in on the action, head to betonline.net today. It's very easy. Take the mobile device and head to betonline.net. When you get there, check out all of the information that they have to make you a smarter sports bettor. You need podcast news. You want stats. You want scores. You want information. They've got everything available at your fingertips at betonline.net. So head to betonline.net today. Get in on the action. NBA, football, college football, NHL, boxing, golf, esports. Everything is available to you at betonline.net. Head there today with your mobile device. Betonline.net is where the action starts. All right, so let's get into some numbers, okay? The Falcons in their 4 wins averaged 28.75 points per game. The Falcons in their 6 losses average 19.5 points per game. When the Falcons run for 167 yards or more, let's back up for just a second. In the Falcons' 4 wins, they average 179 yards rushing in their 4 wins. In their 6 losses, they average 148 yards. Now, most teams would kill to average 148 yards, and they're going to win a lot of games because they can throw it competently and everything that goes along with that. Not this team, though. 179 in their 4 wins, 148 in their 6 losses. When they run for 167 yards or more in a game, they are 4-2. When they run for 166 yards or less, they are 0-4 on the season. Okay? When they throw it 20, when they have 20 or less pass attempts, they are 3-1. When they are 21 or more, 1-5. These are not just random numbers. This is what their offensive identity is. When they have run for 167 yards and thrown it 20 times or less, they're 3-0. That's their blueprint. Is that an easy formula? Not at all. If you have to run for 170 yards in a game to win, that's awfully tough to do. That's a really tough challenge that you have to run for 170 yards and not throw it 20 times to almost ensure victory. But that's the path of this team. That's where this team is. So, again, I promise you, I'm some jabron sitting here, figuring all this stuff out. I sure as hell know that somebody else, coaches can figure all this out and understand what to do. And by the way, when I talk about blueprints, I'm never going to forget Bruce Arians when he was the head coach in Arizona, okay? Their offense in Arizona had gotten bogged down and stagnated and stuff like that. And people are like, well, coach, why is your offense suddenly just not getting it going and all this kind of stuff? And I'll never forget what Bruce Arians said at his press conference. He said, the guys on the defensive side of the football get paid too, right? Those coaches on that side of the football, they get paid as well, right? Meaning that, you may run it really well and do this and that, but those guys are getting paid to figure out how to stop you. And that's what teams are going to do. I can give you 125, 130 yards. The NFL, that 100-yard rushing number is sort of the magic number. No defense wants to give up 100 yards. But with this team, I can give you 125, 130 rushing yards and beat you. I can't give you 170 and beat you. And I'm telling you that you watch that teams will allow the Falcons to, in some ways, establish their run identity, but not run all over them. Because the Falcons, if they don't run for 167 yards, they haven't won a game. They haven't won a game where they've run for 166 yards or less. Think about that. 166. That's where we're at with this trend. So, like it or not, that's the pathway. All right. I want to talk about the offensive line as well. Well, they can't block or this, that, and the other. Okay. Let's talk about that. First off, you're on your third guard. You literally are down to the third string guard because you've had Elijah Wilkinson, who's been a massive upgrade. Let's make sure we understand this. Look at every metric imaginable. This offensive line is drastically better than they were last year. Drastically. Better run block, better pass block efficiency. Guys individually are better this year. And last year, they dropped back 600 times. They had 560 pass attempts, and Matt Ryan took 40 sacks. That's 600 dropbacks. You know where they're at right now? 10 games into the season? They have 220 pass attempts. I think it's 222, I think is what their pass attempt total is. 222 pass attempts for the season. They dropped back 600 times last year with an offensive line drastically worse. Jalen Mayfield was the worst interior offensive lineman in the NFL, probably the single worst offensive lineman across the entire league. And he played and started all 17 games last year. And Hennessy wasn't very good. So one of the things that they're going to have to do is they have to replace Drew Dalman at center. All he keeps doing is getting pushed and pushed and pushed backward. And now he can't snap the football either. There was at least 6 or 7 snaps in shotgun where Mariota has to bend down and grab the ball on the ground. You can't have that because now you're also losing time for him to be able to gather himself and throw the football. So I'm telling you, when Hennessy gets healthy and he's back, that's the first thing I do is I replace my center. Because Hennessy can't be worse than what Drew Dalman is right now. Dalman's killing this offensive line. And look, Derek Brown blew up everybody last night. And I just got done bragging about Caleb McGarry and how good he's been and all this good kind of stuff, right? We just talked about how good he's been. But he still struggles in obvious pass downs when defensive linemen can line up and pin their ears back. He still cannot handle those speed guys coming around. Last night, that final sack was just ridiculous. There's a guy standing right on the end that he's got to block, and he goes inside. When he can run block you, and look at his run blocking grades. They're outstanding this year. Again, this is how he profiled in college. Go back and read his NFL profile. When he can grab you and lock you up, he will move you where he wants to move you. When you go whoop around the outside, he can't handle you. Guy gets a quick step, whoop, your quarterback's on the ground. And it doesn't help that Mariota stands back there and just won't throw the football out of bounds. Won't throw it out of bounds. So, look, their identity, they're third in the NFL in run blocking grade this year. Third. And they're 13th going into last night in pass efficiency grade. Their offensive line is able to hang up. If they're healthy, and you've got Wilkinson, and you've got Matthews, and you got Lindstrom and McGarry, they're capable for what they need to do. Now, let's talk about the passing game, okay? What have we said a million times on this show? Short, quick route, one read, throw. Short, quick route, one read, throw. Short, quick route, one read, throw. That's Mariota. You can't let him linger around. You can't let him, fluffle around back there. You can't let him just scramble around. You can't do any of that stuff. And if that means your yards per attempt isn't very high, good. That's fine. Get Pitts in a quick slant in open space throw to him. Because your linebackers and safeties aren't going to be able to cover him. Short, quick route, one read, throw. Don't think, don't react, don't do anything. You got a hot read, that's your guy, throw it and go. It's worked. When they've won, that's been their philosophy. It's worked. But when you start letting him huck it downfield and he's heaving it downfield and he's scrambling around, and look, that hasn't worked. That's why 20 is that magic number. You don't ask him to do too much in all of this. We'll remind you guys to make sure that you make Locked On Sports Today your second listen. The biggest stories of the day, instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Locked On Sports Today podcast is free and available on Odyssey, YouTube, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. But the philosophy and the strategy for him has worked. Short, quick route, one read, throw. Short, quick route, one read, throw. Not scramble around, huck it here, miss a guy here, throw it all over here. This is why if you're going to play Mariota, and that's fine. It's not my favorite decision, but I understand all of the things. I understand the pre-snap. I understand the leader. I understand all of the different intangibles that go into this. If you're going to do that, then play to his strengths. Make sure you stay committed to the run. Make sure that he basically is you stay ahead of the chains. Make sure that short, quick route, one read, throw. That's what he does. You can look, they've won 4 out of 10 games. You can find a way to win, and your pathway is there. But you have to play to those strengths. And at times, they just start getting away from all of that. They start fluffling around and all this kind of stuff. Now, on to the defense, right? They at least got a sack last night. That was good to see. Again, give me 1 or 2 sacks every game. But remember, look, if defensive backs could catch footballs, there would have been 113 interceptions in that game last night. Because think about how many balls and what we talk about in the preview. We literally talked about whether it's Mayfield or PJ Walker. They're going to give you a couple of gifts. You better grab a hold of them. And those are the differences. We talk about 6 to 8 plays that lose you or win you a football game. When you drop an interception right in your breadbasket, those are plays that go in that 6 to 8 play, 4 to 6 play basket of why did we win? Why did we lose? They're fortunate that Mariota was down on that one pick six play where he's, lobbing it up like he's a shot putter on his back. But those 4 to 6 to 7 plays that win or lose a football game, when you drop interception, and this is not a defense that is good enough to just say, never mind, to a turnover. Why were they able to close out some games earlier in the year? They got a sack late and a turnover late, didn't they? Remember the Seattle game, right? Games like that. Why'd they win? You get a sack late and a turnover late. And those are, look, if they don't, get an interception against Seattle, maybe they lose that game. Because certainly teams have converted 3rd and 18 against this defense. And again, I know Dean Pease wants to hear that the defense is playing better and this, that, and the other. And I get all of that stuff. I understand they are in some ways. But you have to get off the field on 3rd down. And that, look, they only gave up 25 points last night, right? Okay, that's not a terrible number. But the problem is the identity of this team. This team is not built to go out and score 28. When they've won, they score 28 points. Part of that, by the way, too, has been defensive touchdowns. Again, they're a 3-touchdown offense. And if you're going to win games, unfortunately, that bend don't break. You have to be able to try to keep teams at 20 or so. And then those 4 to 7 plays that win or lose a football game, you have to capitalize on those plays. You can't give up 230 rushing yards. You can't let Donta Foreman, who looked like Chuck Foreman last night, running all over him. That's 2 100-yard games. The last time the Falcons gave up 200 yards rushing in a game, that would be October 31st of last year against, ready, the Carolina Panthers. Last time they gave up 200 yards on the ground. Carolina can figure the Falcons out. They can figure it all out. They just blow it. And look, we talk about those 4 to 7 plays. How about Eddie Guerrero, Latino Heat, out there kicking 60-yard field goal last night? He had a 49 and a 59-yard field goal after he couldn't make an extra point, and he missed an extra point. Now you got Eddie Guerrero, Latino Heat, out there whacking it, from midfield for a field goal. Those are those plays that are the difference in the game. He couldn't make those last game or the Falcons would have lost. He made them this game, and they find a way to win. That's why it's so finite. And unfortunately for this team, I don't want to say that they have to play perfect, but they almost have to play perfect. You can't miss multiple extra points. You can't let them, you can't drop interceptions in your breadbasket. You can't have your quarterback throw it 50 yards downfield when he's got no shot whatsoever. I don't care if you got Ronaldo Nehemiah. Remember Skeets Nehemiah, the track star from the 84 Olympics when he played for the San Francisco 49ers? Remember they brought him? He was a track star, a hurdler. You could have that guy running downfield. If you overthrow him by 25 yards, it doesn't really matter. If that's not your quarterback's strength, it doesn't really matter. You have Carl Lewis running routes if you want. That's why they have to get back to what they do. They're not going to win a game with 30 attempts. They won one time where they threw it 28 times. Other than that, they start getting up in the high 20s, low 30s, they won't win a football game. And they're showing you by the numbers that if they don't run for at least 170 yards, they can't win football games like that. And that's the frustrating part. That's why it's not just about Ridder versus Mariota or whatever. It's about their identity and what they do well and what they don't do well. And that's what teams are figuring out. Get them out of their comfort zone. Get them out of what they want to do. Don't let them dictate. We dictate to them. What do you think when they play Washington, who they can certainly beat? But when they take Jonathan Allen and those guys, you think they don't know that Drew Dalman can't block those guys? You don't think Jonathan Allen doesn't watch the tape of Derek Brown on Drew Dalman and say, give me some of that? What are you going to do when he ends up with 6 tackles for loss and a dozen tackles on the day? Your offense ain't going to go anywhere. So I got to get back to doing what you do best. And that's why, again, there are numbers, there are pathways, there are things that are out there that tell you what they do well and not do well. And that's what gets frustrating, because the Panthers are not a good football team. That franchise is dreadful right now. And again, injuries reign. Somebody was going to win that game. And we keep talking about, well, they got the Bears. Okay. Bears are not a very good football team. What are they? They're like 3-6 right now. Justin Fields, he set the record last week for most rushing yards in a regular season game ever by a quarterback. Okay. You know that they've given up the third most rushing yards of any team in the NFL? Do you know that they've given up the second most rushing touchdowns of any team in the NFL? So their defense ain't stopping anybody. Their defense ain't stopping anybody running the football. Everybody runs against them, and everybody can run it in the end zone against them. You better be able to go out there and exploit that when you play in a week from Sunday and get back your identity. Not try to prove a point. Not let Mariota huck it around, throw it 50 yards downfield. So this is not about it's time to start Ridder or this, that, and the other. They're not going to listen to all that. They are trying to win football games, trying to win this division, and they believe, and I'll trust Arthur Smith on this, they believe Marcus Mariota gives them the best ability to win a football game. Well, okay. If that's the case, then you had better play to his strengths. You better be able to play to what Mariota and this offensive identity is. Because at some point, you are going to have to get back to winning games. At some point, you can't give away 2, 3, 4 games in a row. At some point, you're going to have to get back into, can I put a W in the column? Because those teams know what the Falcons want to do. They know what their identity wants to be. They know what they want to do. And everybody now is going to load up and try to take it away from the Falcons. We'll see what happens, but I don't think the Bears are going to be a cupcake or a walkover game like some people think that they are. All right, well, thank you so much for making Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery your first listen every day. Don't forget, Locked On Sports Today needs to be your second podcast listen. The biggest stories of the day, instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Don't forget, they're free and available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get all your podcast information from. Don't forget, put in YouTube when you get there, Locked On Sports Atlanta in the search browser. Hit that subscribe button. Be a part of our ever-growing community. We are free and available on all of your favorite podcast platforms, including Spotify, Odyssey. Download us for free. Leave us a 5-star review. Roku and Amazon Fire. Check us out on those platforms as well. Give us a review there. And, of course, follow me at JMCH316 on my Twitter. Have a great weekend. We'll be back with you Monday. This has been Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked On Sports Atlanta.